Okay, so it's been a while since I recorded or since I made the course on cost accounting. So I am re-recording the discussions and putting them up here on the YouTube channel. Alright, so for us to understand first yung cost accounting. So mainly ang cost accounting ay ginagamit for the manufacturing companies or involved sa mga manufacturing process, okay? And then, para mas maintindihan natin, first we're going to be discussing the types of cost involved, especially yung mga ma-encounter natin in this subject, okay? So to begin, we have the types of cost. First is the manufacturing cost, since, we're involved in determining the cost of the products that have gone through a manufacturing process. So, lahat ng cost involved sa pagbuo or pagpo-produce ng isang product, so yun yung tinatawag natin na manufacturing cost. Meron tayong tatlong manufacturing cost elements. Ito yung ating direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Okay? So, to give you an explanation, direct materials, ito yung cost ng materials na makikita mo mismo dun sa ating end product. Okay? So, for example, we have here a notebook. So, dito sa notebook na to, siguro ang direct materials dito, edi syempre yung pinakang paper na makikita natin. And then you have your cardboard na front and cover, right? And then you have the yarn on the side. Kita ba? Yeah. You have the yarn on the side, right? Okay, so dito sa product na to, let's say, ang direct materials dito would be the paper. Kasi siya yung pinakang bulk ng product. Siya yung pinakang makikita mo dun sa end product natin. Okay? Directly traceable dun sa product. And then we have yung direct labor, cost of labor paid to the factory workers directly involved in the manufacturing process. Okay? So dito, syempre merong mga taong either it's possible na pwedeng gawa siya ng tao or pwedeng merong machines. So I don't know kung ano yung ginamit ng manufacturing company. Pero kung tao, handmade yung paglalagay ng yarn. So lahat ng workers na nagtrabaho para, buuin itong notebook na to, from yung pagpo-produce ng paper, tapos pagka-cut, and then pagbubuo ng how many leaves sa isang notebook, paglalagay ng cover, and then of course yung paglalagay nitong yarn on the side. So lahat ng tao na involved dun sa factory work, okay, in the manufacturing process, we call that direct labor, okay? And then we have itong manufacturing overhead, last manufacturing cost element natin. Ito naman yung mga indirect materials, not directly traceable dito sa ating product. And then yung mga indirect labor natin, like factory maintenance personnel and others incurred in the factory, kagaya ng rent ng factory building, depreciation ng factory equipment, utility bills na ginamit sa factory. Okay? So yung manufacturing overhead, indirect labor, indirect materials, and other costs na indirect, hindi mo siya makikita or matitrace directly dito sa product, pero involved siya dun sa manufacturing process. So, again, directly related, pero related pa din dun sa manufacturing process. Okay? Pero hindi lang siya directly related dun sa product na pinoproduce. Okay? So, example natin, di ba? Siyempre, kinat itong notebook natin. So, either kung machinery siya na, automatic nagkakat ng paper, ayun, tapos merong machinery na automatic nag-i-stack ng mga papers na to, tapos nagka-count ng how many leaves sa isang notebook, tapos yung naglalagay ng cover on the top and the bottom, okay? So, yung equipment na yon, since that is related to the manufacturing nitong product, so part siya dun sa manufacturing overhead, yung depreciation niya, right? And then also, we have yung mga materials not directly used dito sa finished product. So, di ba we have this yarn? Syempre, para maputol to, syempre gumagamit sila ng scissors or other tools, right? So, yung mga gamit na yon, hindi naman siya makikita dito sa ating final product, pero ginamit siya sa manufacturing process. So, yung cost nun, ng mga tools na yun na ginamit din in the production. So, that's also part of the manufacturing overhead. And then, of course, let's say yung building ng factory, not traceable, syempre, hindi mo makikita sa product, but still, they're related dun sa production ng product natin. So, factory. Okay, na ginamit dun dun ginawa yung production process. So, part siya ng manufacturing overhead. Alright? So, yung rent, utilities, mga maintenance personnel dun sa factory, kasama sila dun sa manufacturing overhead. Okay? And then there are other types. We'll go over them. So, we have these types of costs, dalawa, product cost, saka period cost. Yung product cost, lahat ng cost na ginamit or na-incur to manufacture the product. So, ito yung direct materials, direct labor, saka manufacturing overhead. Okay? So, yun yung product cost natin. Tinatawag din siya na manufacturing cost. Right? So, ito naman, kina-classify into two depending on whether the products are sold or not. So, kapag nabenta yung products, so, syempre, ililipat na natin siya into, malilipat na siya sa sales. So, kailangan natin kunin yung cost of goods sold, right? Tapos, kapag hindi pa naman nabebenta yung products, so, yung cost niya, ipapresent pa natin siya sa financial statements as finished goods inventory. Okay, nasa inventory pa siya, pero finished goods na. Okay, tapos hindi pa siya nabebenta, kaya nasa inventory pa lang siya. Pero pag nabenta na, so may corresponding sales account, tapos yung cost of goods sold, ililipat na rin doon yung manufacturing cost or yung product cost natin. Okay? And then, meron tayong tinatawag na period cost. Ito naman yung cost na hindi related dun sa pagproduce nitong ating products. Okay? Ang kasamahan dito is rent ng office space. Okay? Kasi dun sa office space, kumbaga, may mga tao dun na pwedeng involved sa pag-run ng business, pagko-coordinate ng sales, ng suppliers, pero hindi related dun sa pag-manufacture ng product. Right? So, yun, period cost yun. Okay? Wala siyang relation dun sa manufacturing process, so period cost ang kanyang classification. Another is advertising. Okay? Kasi pag nagawa na yung product, saka pa lang siya ibebenta, so mayroong corresponding na advertising, pero hindi siya directly related dun sa production. Kasi kailangan matapos mo yung production. Okay, pag andyan na yung product, saka mo siya, diba, ibebenta, saka ka mag-involve ng mga sales representatives, bibigyan mo sila ng sales commission kapag nakabenta sila. Okay, so yung mga expenses na yon, advertising, sales commission, so hindi na siya product cost, sila ay considered as period cost na. Okay? And then we also have utilities ng office again. Okay? Kasi dun sa office, hindi naman dun nangyari yung manufacturing process, so period cost siya. And then yung supplies na hindi ginamit sa production, but ginamit sa office, diba, like office supplies, mga ballpen, pagpiprint ng reports, pero not related in the manufacture of the product again. So they are classified as period cost. Okay? Ang tawag sa kanila, other term for that is administrative and selling expenses. Okay? So, yung product cost natin, we also call them manufacturing cost. Ang inclusion ay direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. And then, depending on kung nabenta ba siya or hindi, kapag nabenta, so cost of goods sold, kapag hindi pa, so nasa finished goods inventory pa siya. Okay? And then, on the other hand, we have period cost, mga expenses na not related to the manufacturing process, pero ginastos pa rin ng business to operate the business, right? Ang tawag natin dito also is administrative and selling expenses. Okay? So, we have two manufacturing costs, tapos administrative and selling expenses. Okay? Other term for them, na di product cost, saka period cost. Alright? And then other, we have non-manufacturing costs from the term itself, edi not attributable to the manufacture of the products. Okay? And ito din yung administrative and selling cost. Okay? Ito din yung period cost. Non-manufacturing cost. Okay? Just another term na ginagamit to describe them. Okay? So, ang inclusion, we have research and development costs, marketing or advertising, selling and distribution, customer service, general and administrative cost. Alright? So, kayo malilito. Mamaya siguro mag-review din tayo sa last part. And then we have product cost and manufacturing cost. Technically, they are the same. Period cost and non-manufacturing cost, or administrative and selling expenses, they are technically the same. Okay, just to be clear on that. And then we have types of cost naman. Direct cost, ito yung costs that are directly traceable to the cost object. So we have two, yung direct material saka direct labor. Okay. And then we have cost object. Ang example nito ay yung mismong product or yung isang product line or yung isang department. Okay, product department. Okay, yung tinatawag natin kunwari ito, product. Notebook, like yung product line, let's say paper products, pwedeng notebook, pwedeng pad, pwedeng notepad. So they are on the same from the same line kasi lahat sila ay paper products, right? And then you have your department, so pwedeng school supplies department. So basta lahat ng school supplies, pwedeng notebook, ballpen, pencil. Okay, so that's one department. And then you have the product line specific, like writing materials ba yan, paper products ba yan. Okay, and then you have your specific product, right? So they all of them are cost objects, all right? And then we have indirect cost, refers to costs that are not directly traceable to a cost object. Example nito, repairs and maintenance costs that are applied to various departments and in the production too. Okay? So sa manufacturing process, we have the manufacturing overhead, indirect cost yun. And then outside of the production process, syempre we have the general and administrative expenses. Those are also indirect costs. So indirect siya kasi, not directly traceable dun sa ating end product. Okay, so that's why it's called indirect cost. Okay, and then we have relevant costs. So ginagamit naman ito sa differential accounting. Future costs that differ under alternative courses of action. So later we'll have a separate discussion probably on this. Pero ang sinasabi dito is if you have two options, okay, two options. Option 1, option 2 na gagawin mo siya and then you have to decide which one you're going to choose. So, it's possible kasi na dito sa dalawang options na to, merong magkakapareho na cost, okay? And then, meron namang cost items din na hindi magkapareho, okay? Ang relevant cost lang na tinatawag edi yung differential cost or yung between these two options, magkaiba yung cost niya. Okay? So, for example, dito sa option 1 saka sa option 2, parehong merong materials na, let's say, paper materials costing 10,000 parehas. Okay? So, in that case, they are not relevant kasi pareho lang naman eh. Kumbaga, hindi yun yung pagbabasehan mo ng decision mo. Okay? Kasi pareho silang meron na. Okay? So, ang magiging relevant cost lang sa'yo ay di yung items na magkaiba silang dalawa. Okay, so let's say dito sa kabila merong machinery ang ginamit sa production. So let's say machinery 50,000. Dito sa option 2, instead of using equipment, ang gusto niya, tao na lang ang gagawa ng product. So labor cost ang meron siya. So let's say 60,000. Okay, so in that case, relevant cost siya kasi di ba magkaiba. Etong isa, mayroong cost of machinery, walang cost of labor. Ito naman kabila, merong cost of labor pero walang cost of machinery. Okay, so they differ between the courses of action. So we call them relevant costs kasi they have a bearing in your decision making, right? And then we have opportunity cost, benefit given up when one alternative is chosen over the other. So for example, yun na yung ating options. You have option 1, 10,000 na materials, tapos 50,000 na cost of machinery. So, total is 60,000, right? And then you have option 2, 10,000 na materials, 60,000 na labor cost, okay, for the workers. So, in this sense, you have 60,000 and then you have 70,000 total cost between option 1 and option 2. So, pag pinili mo si option 1, so, ang opportunity cost mo would be si option 2 kasi hindi mo siya pinili. So, yun yung benefit given up when one alternative is chosen over the other. So, for example, pag nag-produce ka nung product mo using option 1, so, syempre, let's say, ang mapoproduce mo using it is 50,000 units. Alright? And then, dito naman sa option 2, pag siya yung ginamit mo, ang mapoproduce is, let's say, 60,000 units. Okay? Pag pinili mo si option 1, so, opportunity cost mo yung resulting production ni option 2. Okay? And vice versa. Okay? Depending on what other factors or considerations ang take into account ng management. But essentially, opportunity cost, kapag pinili mo isang option, ano yung mawawala sa'yo? Because of the option na hindi mo pinili. Alright? Sunk costs, or tinatawag din na historical cost, already incurred and cannot be changed. As such, it is treated as an irrelevant cost. So, irrelevant siya in as such that nagastos mo na, nangyari na, hindi mo na siya mababago. So, anong bearing pa niya sa decision mo? Kasi normally, ang decision making natin, di ba, it should affect future decisions. Okay? So, yung sunk cost or yung historical cost, wala na siyang bearing. Irrelevant na sila dun sa magiging decision mo currently or for the future. Alright? So, yun yung tinatawag natin na sunk cost. Okay? And then we have types of costs again. Two classifications naman nung differential costs. Okay? Di ba kanina earlier, differential cost siya, mag-ibig sabihin, magkaiba siya between the options. Okay? Incremental cost, aka increment, ito na yung increase in cost from one alternative to another. Okay? So, let's say, ang main option talaga or kumbaga kino-consider ng business na gusto nilang i-apply is itong si option 1. Right? So, you have 50,000 for machineries. Okay? And then itong si option 2, labor, intensive naman siya. So, for the worker, 60,000 yung magagastos. So, from 50,000 to 60,000. So, we call that incremental cost kasi lumaki yung cost, di ba? From 50 to 60,000. Okay? Pero makikita mo lang siya kapag alam mo kung ano yung tawag dito, kung ano yung first option ng company. Okay? So, let's say detrimental cost naman, ibig sabihin, pababa naman yung cost. From one option to another, bumaba yung cost. Okay? So, let's say na ang kino-consider ng business is yung option 2. Yun yung tinitingnan nila na gusto nilang i-implement or yun yung gusto nilang maging final decision. Okay? So, from 60,000 na labor-intensive or for the workers, pag hindi nila pinili yon, their other option would be to choose the usage of machineries, 50,000 yung magagastos. Okay? So, from 60,000, yung option nila, they have a lower option na 50,000. Okay? So, in that case, decremental cost siya. Or decrement kasi pababa yung one cost to another. Okay? So, yun yung incremental and detrimental. Basta alam mo dapat kung alin yung base mo. Okay? Kasi kung ang base mo is from your base to another option, bumababa siya or tumaas. Okay? So, yan. And then, we have variable cost and fixed cost. Okay, itong variable cost na tinatawag natin, ibig sabihin, nagba-vary siya directly to the volume of production. So, kapag tumaas yung production cost, pag yung number of units na ipoproduce, yung total variable cost is tumataas din. Okay? Meron tayong tinatawag na per unit variable cost, kaya siyang computin, which is a constant amount. Okay. For example, itong notebook natin. Pag magpo-produce ng isang notebook, let's say merong variable cost na 5 piso. Okay? So, pag nag-produce ka ng 2 notebook, ang total variable cost mo would be 5 pesos per notebook times the number of units, 2. So, 10 pesos. Right? So, ibig sabihin, constant siya per unit. Okay? So, kung mag-produce ka ng 100 units, times 5 pesos per notebook. So, how much is that? 500. Okay, na total variable cost mo. Okay, so kapag nag-increase yung production, nag-increase din yung total variable cost. Pero yung variable cost per unit, constant siya. Okay, same amount or same figure. And then we have itong tinatawag natin na fixed cost. Ito naman yung cost na the same siya regardless of production volume. Mag-produce ka man ng isang unit or 1,000 units, ang fixed cost mo is the same. Ang example nito ay rent. Okay? So, you have your factory, nare-rent nyo lang yung space, let's say 10,000 a month. Okay? And for that particular month, nag-produce ka man ng isang notebook, magbabayad pa rin yung business ng 10,000 for the rent ng building, right? Or mag-produce ka ng 1,000 notebooks, ang babayad mo na rent, 10,000 pa din. Mag-produce ka ng 20,000 notebooks, ang ibabayad mo sa rent, 10,000 pa din. Okay? So, yung fixed cost, yung total amount niya is fixed. Yun na yun. Okay? Pero, in relation to production volume, kapag isa lang yung kapag isa lang yung produce mo, so i-absorb niya yung buong amount ng fixed cost. Okay? So, for yung 10,000 na rent, for one notebook, so 10,000 yung isa shoulder niya na fixed cost. Okay? Pero kapag dinamihan mo yung production volume, so let's say 1,000 notebook. So yung 10,000 na rent, i-divide mo by the 1,000 notebooks. Okay, so how much is that? 10 pesos. Okay, so bawat notebook magsha-shoulder ng 10 pesos from the fixed cost. So ang nangyayari, kapag tumataas yung volume of production mo, yung fixed cost per unit ay lumiliit kasi dumadami yung nag-share doon sa fixed cost. Pero yung total amount niya, total fixed cost is the same regardless nung volume ng iyong production. Okay? Direct costs are normally variable. Manufacturing overhead cost is a mix of variable and fixed costs. Okay? So, yung direct materials natin saka direct labor, normally variable sila. And then, yung manufacturing overhead, depende. Merong certain figures dyan na variable and then meron ding certain items na fixed cost. Okay? Types of cost, there are two classifications. Fixed cost, ng fixed cost, we have committed and discretionary. Yung fixed cost, committed fixed cost na tinatawag, long-term ito in nature. So, pang matagalan. Usually, merong contract na involved. Bound by a contract, kagaya ng leases. Okay? So, for example, SM, kapag nag-rent kayo sa SM, hindi siya per month. Okay? It's a contract na let's say 5 years or 10 years na contract. Tapos regardless kung ano man mangyari sa business mo, malugi ka man or kumita ka man, naka-fix na 5 years yon. Okay? So, kahit magsara ka ng after 3 years, let's say nalugi na yung business mo, tuloy ka lang na magbabayad ka pa rin ng lease. Okay? Kasi nakakontrata ka ng 5 years. Okay? Again, it's just an example. Okay, as such, it cannot be eliminated easily by the management. Hindi mo basta-basta, okay, wag na nating gastusan yung particular na cost na yun. Okay? Hindi pwede kasi nakabound ka ng contract. Okay? And then we have discretionary fixed costs. Ito usually ay short-term, resulting from annual decisions of the management and can be changed by the management. For example, nito ay advertising. Okay, try nating mag-TV commercials. Siguro mga gastusan natin ng 100,000 for this year. Okay? And then, if next year, nakita nila na maganda naman yung naging result ng advertising, so, pwede nilang taasan. Let's say, gawin nating 200,000. Baka mas dumami palalo yung benta natin. Okay? So, they can change the amount on, let's say, an annual basis. Okay? And so, tinatawag natin siya na discretionary fixed cost. Okay? For a period of time, usually 1 year, naka-fix na siya. Okay? Pero, siya ay pwede mong baguhin the following year. Okay? So, discretionary, pwede mong baguhin the following year. Unlike itong committed fixed cost na usually ay for a number of years, hindi mo siya pwedeng basta-basta baguhin na lang. Okay? And then we have mixed cost. Ito naman yung halo, merong portion na variable, tapos merong portion na fixed cost. Example nito ay manufacturing overhead. So, di ba dun sa overhead, meron tayong rent. Yung mga yun, fixed. Okay, yung depreciation ng machinery, fixed din siya. Yung wages ng factory maintenance personnel, kasi meron ka dyang 3 tao, nag-aayos dyan ng mga gamit, naglilinis ng factory every month. So, yung sweldo nila fixed din, di ba? Regardless of the volume of production. Pero, itong, let's say, utilities. Let's say, machinery natin, syempre, gumagamit ng electricity, kunwari. So, sa paggamit natin ng machinery, depende sa dami ng ating production, di ba? Kung tuloy-tuloy yung production, edi, syempre, tuloy-tuloy din na ginagamit yung machinery. So, pag madalas natin siyang ginagamit for production, yung utilities is dumadami din, or yung amount na na-charge sa atin is lumalaki din. So, in a way, variable siya. Alright? And then, yung indirect materials, pwede rin siya maging variable. Okay? So, in essence, for example, yung mga ginagamit na, eto na lang, kunwari yung yarn lang. Okay? So, indirect materials siya kasi hindi naman siya very significant part of the final product, kaya kinoconsider siya as indirect. Pero syempre, pagdami rin ng production, so sa pagdami din ng kailangan mo na yarn. Okay? So, in a way, variable cost pa din siya. Okay? So, mixed cost in such that merong part na fixed and then merong part na variable. Okay? We can see the point that utilities are sometimes mixed. too, as well as the indirect materials. So you cannot, tawag dito, hindi mo naman siya pwedeng i-generalize na sa lahat ng companies ay ang utilities ay variable. Kasi kunwari, kung hindi naman siya nagde-depend sa electricity, yung production, edi walang bearing yung utilities, right? Magkakaroon lang siya ng bearing kung siguro machinery intensive yung production process, okay, ng isang company, okay? They have a portion that is fixed and beyond that is variable, okay? So, depende din dun sa nature talaga ng production process, dun sa product, kung paano siya pinoproduce, okay? So, you have to take into account the production process for you to identify or determine kung ito ba ay mixed cost, and then dun sa mixed cost, aling portion yung fixed, aling portion yung variable. Alright? Next, we have step cost. When activity changes level of production, this cost changes by a certain step or level. The change may be an increase or a decrease. Okay? So, for example, merong certain expenses na by batch siya. Okay? So, for example, pag nag-produce ka ng 5,000 to 10,000, meron kang certain cost, let's say setup cost, para dun sa machinery, na 10,000 per batch. Okay? So, kunwari ay nag-produce yung company ng 12,000. Okay? So, para dun sa dalawang batch nga, 10,000 saka 2,000. So, dalawang setup cost yung i-incur ng business. Okay? So, depende dun sa level of production, merong certain range, 5 to 10,000 isang batch. Okay? So, isang batch na agad siya. Gawin natin 1 to 10,000. Okay? So, yung 12,000, dalawang batch siya. Okay? Although, yung 12,000 saka yung 20,000, essentially, pareho lang sila ng setup cost. Okay? Kasi essentially, dalawang batch lang yung gagamitin. Pero since, depending on the production na rin, kung i-maximize nila yung setup cost or hindi. Kasi sometimes, it would also depend on the demand for the product. Kung ilan yung ipoproduce nila. Okay? So, yun tinatawag natin na step cost. So, sometimes, nakadepende sa, by batch ba yan. And for every batch, di tumataas. Saka lang tumataas yung cost. Okay? So, let's say, 8,000. Same setup cost kapag 9,000 or 10,000 yung pinroduce mo. Right? Pero kapag naging 11,000 na yan, so, doble na yung setup cost. Pag 12,000, ganun pa din, doble pa lang din. 13 hanggang 20,000. Okay? Kapag lumabas na siya ng 20,000, saka pa lang ulit siya magti-triple na yung setup cost. Okay? So, yeah. Step cost, in a way, behavioral, kumbaga, description ng behavior ng type of cost. And then we have step variable cost, have small differences between levels. So, in this case naman, medyo maliit yung distance from one step to another step. Pag naman step fixed cost have large differences between levels. So, medyo malaki ang agwat, okay, yung pagitan ng pagbabago ng differences, okay? So, yun. Hanggang dun lang pala. And then, itong nandito sa baba, it's essentially yung script ng mga nasa taas natin. Okay. And then, I'd like to point out, meron akong note pala dito, some would say that nails in a wooden chair are part of direct materials. Pero yung iba, sasabihin nila, it forms part of indirect material. So, ano ba yung masasabi ko dito? Usually, in a written problem, it's not really broken down into various items. It would just tell you how much the direct materials are and the indirect cost. So, mostly ganun yung nangyari. Saka, usually din. So, it wouldn't be a real problem to you. Okay, unless you're so lucky that it got included in an exam you're taking. Pero for the most part, karamihan is, ganun naman talagang naka-provide kung magkano yung direct materials, saka yung indirect cost. Direct and indirect cost. Okay, so you don't have to determine pa kung para saan ba yung particular items na yan. Okay? And then in real life naman, it's subjective. Depende dun sa treatment ng company. Okay? Classification would depend on the management, whether the cost is material enough to be considered direct, or some other factor they want to base their decision on. Okay? Sometimes it also depends on convenience. Kung hindi naman convenient na i-account mo siya as direct material, edi wag na nga naman. Ilagay mo na lang siya sa indirect material. Okay, so the point is, as long as it's gonna be part of the cost of goods cost of goods manufactured, so it's good. Okay, kasi at the end of the day, direct materials, indirect materials, pareho siyang part ng total manufacturing cost. Okay, so that's about it. Okay, with regards to losses, normal loss forms part of the product cost, while abnormal loss forms part of period cost. So, merong separate topic tayo dito. Didiscuss natin siya sa process costing. Pero with regards to the classification, kung product cost ba siya or period cost, kapag normal loss, so part pa siya ng product cost, pag abnormal, sa period cost siya, charge. Alright? So, that's about it. And then again, if you want to check this particular online course, it's erctutorials.teachable.com. I will put the website name somewhere in the screen. Alright? So, ayun po ang ating discussion ng types of cost, ating unang topic for cost accounting. Alright, so that's it. Thanks and bye.